Thanks for joining us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot on our plate today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Samsung Electronics sees its profits soar in the third quarter thanks to its semiconductor and display businesses. The health of the global economy might depend on how well we deal with climate change, as countries around the world are faced with lower productivity, falling commodity prices, and massive costs to cope with natural disasters. We begin with some good news for Samsung Electronics. The Korean tech giant saw its operating profit jump more than 80% in the third quarter from the year before, driven by strong chip sales and a pickup in its mobile business. Ari Kim Min-ji starts us off.
Samsung Electronics' third quarter figures show the tech giant's earnings are on an upswing. The company had an operating profit of about $6.5 billion in the July to September period, up 82% from a year ago. Sales rose almost 9%, while net profit also climbed nearly 30% during the same period.
Currency conditions were favorable in the third quarter. Also, improved production costs of semiconductors and strong demand for chips, as well as OLED displays used for new smartphones, helped drive up the earnings momentum.
Samsung's chip business, which has been the company's cash cow, posted an operating profit of $3.2 billion, setting a new record. Its IT and mobile division, which have been a drag on the company's earnings, posted an operating profit of $2.1 billion, improving from last year but still down slightly from the previous quarter. This as price cuts in the new Galaxy S6 smartphones did push up the number of handsets sold, but the lower average selling price ate into overall profits. Despite the rosy report, analysts aren't so optimistic about Samsung's performance in the fourth quarter. They say earnings will likely decline, facing stiffer competition with Apple's new products and seasonally lower demand for memory chips. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
On top of that, Samsung Electronics has also announced plans to buy back shares with its $50 billion worth of cash reserves, a move seen as an attempt to appease investors. Samsung says it will buy back and cancel $10 billion worth of shares, while raising capital spending by 14% this year. Sluggish smartphone sales have caused the company's profits to fall below analysts' estimates. While the Korean tech giant has been piling up cash, pressure has been mounting from shareholders to boost returns. Korea's household debt continues to swell as demand for mortgage loans keeps rising. The Financial Supervisory Service says outstanding household debt rose by $5.4 billion in September to stand at $543.9 billion. Although the September gain was slightly lower than the on-month rise in August, the agency says low interest rates and recovery signs in the local housing market contributed to the rise in loans. Now, the average loan delinquency rate was at 0.66% as of the end of September, down 0.1 percentage point from the previous month. Frozen again. The U.S. Federal Reserve has held its interest rates at near zero during its October meeting. But what's new is that it has sent signals that a rate hike could be on the table at its December meeting. The Fed has removed a sentence from its statement which said financial developments and economic activity overseas could slow the U.S. economy. And for the first time, Fed policymakers pointed out concretely that the next meeting will be the time for them to make a solid decision on whether or not it'll be time to raise rates.
Thanks very
The impact of climate change is posing greater challenges over time for countries around the world. Not only does this mean trouble for the environment, it's becoming a growing threat to the global economy as well. Let's take a closer look.
Back in May, a massive heat wave killed nearly 2,000 people in India as temperatures soared to nearly 50 degrees Celsius, going as far as melting roads. India wasn't alone in its fight against scorching temperatures, as Iran's heat index, which measures the discomfort levels experienced in the air, went off the charts in July, hitting nearly 75 degrees Celsius. China, on the other hand, suffered catastrophic damage from heavy rain, floods, and landslides. The world is suffering from climate change and climbing temperatures, and so is the economy. Numerous studies have warned that the phenomenon will have devastating effects on the global economy as a whole. Not only will it reduce average incomes by nearly 1/4 relative to the state without climate change, it will also widen the gap between rich and poor countries. Experts say the world is only beginning to understand just how much havoc climate change can wreak on the economy, and that the consequences may be much more serious than generally believed. With Korea being no exception to these changes, what can be done to prevent what some call an economic disaster that's at our doorstep?
And to tell us more about this, Professor Chung So-young of Korea University joins us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here today.
All right, as much as climate change is seen as an environmental problem, many experts are obviously saying that it's increasingly becoming a problem for the global economy as well. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, instead of providing my own thoughts about this, then let me just quote some of the outstanding figures statement. Notably Secretary Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations, who said earlier this year in Paris, where climate change is supposed to be held, that if there is someone who believes that climate is just a matter of environment, that's a wrong opinion. Climate change is just not only a matter of environment, it's a matter of finance, matter of economy, matter of politics. So it has so many aspects, and including economic issues.
And we're already seeing the effects of it, for example, from the El Nino.
Sure. I mean, the El Nino is one of the important aspects of the climate change in terms of negative impact, and then it has caused a sort of the serious problem, for instance, of the food security related issues because of the increasing temperature, and then we start to lose the crop stocks, and that has also contributed another constant contribution in terms of decreasing the GDPs. And then if we go to the future price market, then there is a soaring price to make sure that we will have enough stocks of the commodities. So and then not only UN climate change institutions, also G20, which is primary economic organization to talk about the global economy, try to take this issue as one of the major issues to be discussed by the financial ministers. So in the sense that we see a lot of negative impacts on it.
And of course, Korea is not an exception to this. I mean, just past this summer, Korea suffered massive losses from a prolonged drought. So what are some problems that Korea is facing directly or indirectly from climate change?
Well, there are several aspects. First of all, we lost the spring and fall, right?
Yes,
in a long summer and a very cold winter, but we don't have a fall and spring. So weather pattern has been changed, and then we haven't seen that if we go to Daegu, then this is not a place where we can have a lot of apples anymore. So it comes to the north. So this kind of the scientific aspect that we can see some changes, and also climate change involves other aspects of economy, and unless we try to be able to cope with some of the changing environments, such as the electric vehicles and then hybrid vehicles, and then some possible nuclear power, how can we deal with? Unless we follow the global trend on all these issues, then we might be negatively influenced by the impact of the climate change. And then climate change is about the global leadership. Right. So our global leaders needs to take climate change as major issues.
All right, and we can see a growing number of countries investing in low carbon solutions in order to fight problems resulting from climate change.
Right. Eventually we will not have oils and then coal, right? It's gone away at some point. And then eventually we have to rely on energy efficient technology, meaning that we use the same amount of oil, but we do more. So that's energy efficiency. And then the renewables, so wind, solar, and others, because it's not going to use the CO2 related fossil fuels. And then also nuclear, and then there is another advanced technology of CCS, coal. And then in order to secure all these available technology, it's a matter of creating the 2% GDP of the total whole world. So every country is competing, and then Korea also needs to do it. Every country is in that spot, and then we are talking about that issue.
How far is Korea in investing in low carbon solutions then?
Well, Korea has been seen as one of the forerunners because, as we know that under the last Lee Myung-bak administration, we were pretty much active in low carbon economy, and then this Park-geun-hye administration, it has promoted creative economy, which is all about promoting new green technologies. So R&D and making new business opportunities, everything is there, and Korea is leading all these discussions in the world.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming UN Climate Change Conference, which will last from November 30th to December 11th in France. What are some major issues that are going to be discussed at this conference?
This is not just a matter of one time, the UN conference. This will be a place where all the summits will agree on new climate change regime, which will be applicable from 2020. So countries are supposed to agree on new agreement, which will provide climate change that's not just a matter of environment. It provides the business opportunities. It provides other economic opportunities. Everything needs to be agreed, and then without having any exceptions, no matter whether countries are developed or developing countries. So this is just a very important meeting.
And like you said earlier, major economies need to take the lead in this issue. Then what should Korea do in order to actively respond to climate change?
Right, because climate change is not just a matter of environment, it's promoting low carbon economy. Then to do so, we have to provide some sort of business planning for the governments. And also we have to provide the money. We have to provide the technologies. And surprising enough, two major international organizations are headquartered in the Republic of Korea. They are Global Green Growth Institute, which is supposed to help developing countries to identify what's going to be the low carbon growth pattern. And also GCF, Green Climate Fund, is supposed to provide financial resources for developing countries to meet that target. So Korea needs to utilize all these great organizations which are headquartered in Seoul and Songdo, and then develop the relevant diplomatic strategies so that eventually businesses of Korea can find new opportunities, which is good for all.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today, Professor.
Thank you.
The gap between the rich and poor seems to be getting wider here in Korea. While the top 10% of the population owns nearly 70% of the country's wealth, the bottom 50% holds a mere 2%. Our 성장하는 has more.
New data released by economics professor Kim Nak-yeon at Dongguk University shows that the share of wealth held by those in the top 10% of the population reached 66.4% in 2013. That figure is a slight increase from the average of 63.2% recorded between the years 2000 and 2007, right before the global financial crisis. 2 years ago, to be in the top 10%, you needed at least $196,000 in assets. The assets held by the top 1% also rose from 24% to 26% during the same period. In contrast, the bottom 50% have seen their wealth drop, more evidence of Korea's growing wealth gap. Yet, the disparity isn't as great as in other countries. The share of wealth held by the top 10% in Korea was far lower than in major economies like the US and the UK, which was 76% and 71% during the same period. The report also shows that rate of increase for profits from accumulated assets was faster than the rate from employment income, proving that money can make more money. 손정인, Business Daily.
Ever find yourself getting nervous because of that dropping battery bar on your smartphone? Well, you're not alone in feeling that way. With the growing number of larger and smarter mobile devices, the demand and supply for backup batteries are also climbing. Our Eunice Kim has the story.
For Park Eun-gyo, whose work often keeps her out of the office and on her feet, her smartphone is her saving grace.
지금 급해서 메일 하나 방금 보내드렸는데 그거 한번 확인 부탁드릴게요.
Even though she always keeps an extra battery with her, she's anxious she'll run out of juice.
Much of my job involves getting urgent things done on the go. I'm always on the phone, and oftentimes I use up half a battery in an hour. So I always have a backup.
From texts to pics, GIFs, audio, and video, multimedia has become integral in our lives. But the source that powers the smartphone is struggling to keep up, leading to scenes like this: people halted and slouched near a power outlet in public spaces. Unlike foreign designated phones like the iPhone, Korea-branded phones had offered the option of pulling out a depleted battery to snap in a charged second battery. But with new models like the Samsung Galaxy and Note 5 now ruling that out, demand for backup batteries is on the rise. Particularly helped by word of mouth that China's Xiaomi batteries are cheap and surprisingly effective, backup battery sales have grown more than fivefold in the past year. You can even find high-capacity batteries for rent at some 24-hour convenience stores.
We see high demand between the afternoon and night hours from college students and office workers.
From hexagonal batteries to bendable ones, ideas are just beginning to pour out. Some are even projecting batteries could be a growth area that leaps over semiconductors and displays with the advent of a wearables and electric car era. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
That does it for now, but we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Thanks so much for watching, and bye-bye for now.